Great. So let's get started. Thanks to everyone who is here already, and let's kick this off. So hello and welcome to our webinar, Simple Storage, Supercharge Your Cloud Integrations. So first, a little bit about me. My name is David Hallinan, and I am an integration strategist here at Kloudless. Before we get started with this 30-minute-ish presentation, we have a quick couple housekeeping items. So we are in webinar mode. You will be muted for the entire presentation. Please use the chat to alert us to any issues that may arise. As a quick heads up, we will be answering any questions at the end, so please feel free to ask anything you want during the webinar in the questions panel, and we will address as many as we have time for when we wrap up. Also, if we don't have time to get to every question, we will include any of the questions in our follow-up email as well, and we'll try to answer those. And please feel free to reach out to us afterwards at the email that we provide. Great, so let's get started. So first, let's just talk briefly about Kloudless at a high level. So we provide unified APIs to allow product teams connecting with multiple cloud services for a particular use case deploy their product 8 times faster while decreasing their overall API maintenance by a factor of 4. Essentially, these unified APIs are providing dev teams in many different industries the abilities to reach market faster. We found that teams were spending thousands of hours building and then more importantly maintaining integrations to multiple services that would in turn take away from their time to focus on what's important, their application's own unique functionality. And we also helped to cut down on Jira tickets by about 1,000,000%, which is not a real metric, by the way, but it is probably pretty close. So today, for the sake of helping you with your application's cloud storage integration strategy, I will share my take on the future of enterprise connectivity, as well as show you a handful of use case scenarios for connecting with a unified cloud storage API. So first, let's take a look at why cloud storage integrations are so important these days. So integrations are no longer a nice to have. Both users and organizations alike have transitioned their business and personal workflows into the cloud, and as a result, they keep their files and documents housed in a plethora of different online file storage services. So be it a Dropbox, Box, Ignite, Google Drive, these professionals have made claim to whatever service they feel can adequately store and allow easy retrieval of the files they need for their business or personal life. But at the end of the day, most of these services offer similar to identical functionality. So how do you go about deciding on what cloud storage provider to connect with in your enterprise application? Do you go by market share? Do you perform extensive research into the industry you're targeting and which provider seems to have the highest user base? So both of those are excellent ways to figure out a single integration that might be best. But as anyone here could probably tell me if they've ever built storage integrations into their application before, as soon as you build one connection, your users will want more. So if you choose Dropbox, you're probably immediately going to find users asking for Box or Google Drive or the next in a long line of alternatives. Because even though they may not represent the majority, those users will not be able to fully embrace your application until their file storage service of choice is implemented. So that leads to metrics like this. In the past few years, we've seen a large spike in the number of applications that businesses are connecting to, even in the case of small to medium-sized businesses. So in order to properly use those connections embedded into an application, it means connecting with more and more APIs. There are roughly 30-some odd thousand publicly consumable APIs out there, with no sign of that growth slowing down whatsoever. This is now the modern web and the industry standard of data consumption. So more and more, a developer's job is to connect with, and then, more importantly, maintain that said connection to these APIs. That's a very tough job, and frankly, until you've waded through the documentation, the coding, the testing, and then the follow-up maintenance required for building out these connections, it's hard to truly understand the level of work that goes into a single one, let alone all of them. So many companies decide on whichever service they feel will offer the most value to their application and build out that singular connection. But as I said before, your users will not be satisfied with your preference for cloud storage service integration. Because even though many of your potential users might be ingrained in Dropbox, many of them will also not be. A user that has all their files and documents and potential workflow set up in Box or Google Drive or Ignite is likely to forego your application entirely in search of another that provides the service integration they are comfortable with and, more importantly, deeply invested in already. So never underestimate a user's aversion to migrating their files and folders from one service provider to another. It's essentially the internet's version of moving houses. It's an exhausting process, and if you can afford to hire somebody to do it for you, by all means, go that route. You really want users to show up and see something like this. So almost any potential user that sees value in your product will immediately see a service integration that they're already comfortable with. So by doing this, you can guarantee that some of your new users will more than likely take the time to at least give your application the fair shake that it deserves. The problem with offering only one integration, or even just a small few, is that some people will leave before you've had the chance to win them over. Your application might work amazingly with only Dropbox integration, but some of your potential end users will be too stubborn to give it a try. No one likes to sign up for a new service when it's not on their own terms. You are not an evangelist for these storage platforms. So by choosing only one of them, you're forcing yourself into the role of advocating an entirely different platform than your own. You should worry about selling your own product, not one that integrates with yours. So, how do unified APIs go about making something like this easier for enterprise applications? The answer at this point is unified data models and endpoints. So if you are not clear on the concept, this is a series of REST endpoints configured to access any of these services and more based on which one the end user has authenticated. So more so, thanks to unified data models, the response object will be identical no matter the API it came from, meaning that even if a developer has never seen the documentation for an API before, they could already know what to expect from the data object. So let's take a look at a couple of use cases based on actual customers of ours and how they've used unified storage APIs to solve their integration problems. So first up, we're going to start out with an ed tech company that found success with Kloudless recently. So UTeachIt is an educational platform built for both teachers and students to be able to communicate and collaborate outside of the classroom. These days, educators and students store their files and assignments and other assets in any number of popular cloud storage services such as Google Drive, Dropbox, and Box. UTeachIt's users initially wanted to be able to access, upload, and edit their files within an educational platform without their workflow being interrupted. So the product team at UTeachIt had inherited a bespoke integration for Dropbox and sought to initially build out the rest of the popular file storage services the same way, internally. They started with Microsoft OneDrive, which was a very popular request with their users, but soon they ran into a number of issues. So as it turned out, the initial integration was not what required the bulk of their time and effort. It was the maintenance of the integration that proved to be a headache. Over 3 years of maintaining that bespoke integration, UTeachIt's team created more than 600 JIRA tickets and racked up approximately 8,800 hours towards OneDrive integration and development support alone. So to solve the problem, UTeachIt team needed a solution to manage their integrations efficiently and effectively without diverting resources from their core products. UTeachIt turned to the Kloudless File Storage API to integrate with cloud storage integrations like Box and Dropbox and Google Drive and OneDrive and more. And this one and done approach allowed UTeachIt to access multiple applications in a fraction of the time while drastically reducing the need to consistently monitor their integrations for breaking changes. On top of that, they were able to implement our open source UI tool, the Kloudless File Explorer, to cut down on their time to deployment by allowing students to authenticate and then upload files all through the built-in toolset. So UTeachIt was able to totally revamp its EdTech application by using the Kloudless Unified Storage API. Let's look at how another industry took advantage of an entirely different side of these APIs. So Hawkeye Systems, they work in data security. So they offer threat detection for digital-first enterprise applications. In completely practical terms, that means they protect email, messaging, cloud storage from APTs and phishing and malware and other similar threats. So in order to protect their users, Hawkeye Systems needed access to their users' content itself in order to scan for these threats. That content, however, lives across a number of different services, whether they be files in a cloud storage service or customer records in a CRM system. So for this reason, integration with popular cloud services was crucial to Hawkeye Systems' ability to deliver on its promise of threat detection. What posed a problem for them was this: the more customers that they had, the more services that they needed to integrate with, especially when a single new customer's data was spread across multiple apps. So in this situation, many security solution vendors attempt to build each integration from scratch. That approach, however, would sequester their engineers from their primary responsibilities to focus their time and energy on the quirks and maintenance of each individual cloud service API. Hawkeye Systems wanted to avoid that delay and headache from the get-go because they had worked on integrations prior. So here's how they ended up taking advantage of our offerings. Hawkeye Systems prompts its customers' IT admin to authenticate each app through the Kloudless Unified OAuth flow. This lets Hawkeye Systems authenticate accounts and authorize API requests in a uniform manner without having to implement token exchanges or connector-specific OAuth flows. Hawkeye Systems then uses the Cloudless Activity Monitoring API to monitor activity occurring within any user account across an entire tenant at once. This includes not just changes to files and records, but also audit type activities such as changes to collaboration permissions, login activity, and even changes to users and groups. So luckily, the Activity Monitoring API applies across all the connectors that we offer here at Kloudless. Hawkeye Systems use the Cloudless Unified Storage API to list all files tenant-wide in cloud storage apps specifically, even impersonating individual users if necessary. This enabled Hawkeye Systems to retrieve the file's metadata, permissions, and even binary contents. Their app can then take any appropriate actions, such as unsharing a file if a policy violation gets detected. So thanks to the Unified Storage API, their engineers got to now focus more on the business of security. So rather than amassing expertise in cloud app APIs, which was never what they were brought on to do in the first place, their team could then focus on their primary competency, which was threat detection. So one of the largest use cases that we've seen growing recently has been in construction. So we're going to take look at one example now, construct it. So I don't know if anybody's familiar with the files and documents that go into any normal construction site application use case, but there are quite a lot. So large general contractors have an incredible amount of data that they need to analyze and understand to make better decisions about their business. So Construct It specifically helps them make sense of the millions of images from hundreds of thousands of different projects that would otherwise prove nearly impossible to analyze by hand. Anyone on a project can use Construct It, whether that is a project manager on site or a corporate executive who wants to connect data from multiple projects. In the construction industry, data exists in many different systems, from phones to specialized construction management systems like Procore and Autodesk. With such a variation of use cases and a low cost to market entry, storage solutions are many and media increasingly lives scattered absolutely everywhere. Therefore, to analyze the data first necessitates consolidating it. As a growing startup, Construct It had numerous requests for integration features from its customers. In the past, they had attempted to build their own one-off integrations, yet once they built an integration with one storage service, a request for a similar service with its own distinct API, such as Box or Ignite, would follow. Hopefully you're catching on to a little bit of a theme here. So after turning to Cloudless, Construct It now allows users to sync videos and documents from any cloud storage service right into Construct It automatically. Constructed uses the Kloudless Unified Storage API's file and folder CRUD routes and download and upload capabilities to connect and access media files in apps such as Box, Ignite, and Google Drive. Constructed also received the added benefit of Cloudless's integrations with a handful of other construction apps, specifically Autodesk, PlanGrid, Procore, and Bluebeam. So users who use Constructed can connect their individual cloud storage accounts via Constructed's implementation of the unified Cloudless OAuth flow, which abstracts away the specifics of authenticating with individual providers. Constructed regularly queries for any changes to user content in cloud storage to sync it back over to their app thanks to Cloudless's webhooks and events API activity stream. That means they can easily sync new, updated, or even deleted user content. So if Constructed had built each integration themselves, they guessed that they would have taken a month or two or more on engineering and QA time per connector. Once they turned to Cloudless, they were able to implement a proof of concept in a few weeks' time. So our final use case is going to be in sales enablement, which ended up taking on a very specific blend of leveraging both the Kloudless Unified Storage API as well as our Unified CRM API. So SteelTech made a name for themselves in providing data enrichment and task automation to customer sales teams throughout North America. The company zeroed in on sales team pain points, such as the manual data entry and then the data cleanup work that would follow, that keeps reps from focusing on relationship-based selling. So to provide this intel, SteelTech needed access to an ongoing feed of activity in their sales team's CRM. So they tasked their engineering team with integrating with the most popular CRM, Salesforce, with a plan to later add integrations with HubSpot and Microsoft Dynamics in the future. They quickly realized that they would need access to files within these CRM systems, which are included in the Kloudless Unified Storage API. So unfortunately, with a growing customer base came growing integration complexity. Different customers had different tolerance levels for how quickly they needed their data refreshed. When a new customer insisted on near real-time syncing, the engineering team customized their product for them by increasing their initial product's polling frequency and re-examining the efficiency of their webhooks. So next and not least in their worries, with each additional customer came the request to, surprise, connect with another CRM with its own API specifications. So SteelTech engineers saw themselves transforming into integration amateurs rather than sales product experts that they truly were. The core concepts of accounts, contacts, leads, opportunities, and tasks that span most CRM systems used today, they ended up having to deal with application behavior, API endpoints, data format, and workflows that vary among systems and require engineers to learn the details for each new connections. None of these API services work the same, therefore they'd have to invest a lot of time and energy into learning the intricacies of each one individually. So in researching a way to scale their CRM integrations, SteelTech discovered Kloudless. So with Kloudless, SteelTech could perform CRUD operations to any object in a user's CRM account, taking advantage of several standardized data models for common objects such as accounts and leads. Since SteelTech's engineers embedded the Kloudless API within their app, their end users stayed within their branded product environment while they performed tasks. They were easily able to connect to the Unified Storage API because they had already built out connections to the Unified CRM API. As an added benefit, they were able to leverage the commonalities in place across these unified APIs, such as authorization. So eventually, SteelTech took on customer companies that demanded increased data security measures, so they were able to deploy Kloudless on premises, where they could maintain maximum control and continue near real-time data refresh. So once SteelTech connected to several cloud storage services through the unified API, they noticed they integrated additional services 12 times faster than they had prior to leveraging a unified API. To ice the cake, Kloudless took care of the maintenance of the storage and CRM APIs that they connected to, decreasing SteelTech's maintenance overhead by a factor of 4. So at the end of the day, all of these use cases tell a story of a shared experience across different industries and use cases. And that is, overall, building and maintaining integrations is rarely ever where businesses want to be innovating. It's not part of their core competencies. Your developers are incredibly talented at what they were hired for. So by pigeonholing them into building and then again, more importantly, maintaining API integrations, you're removing them from the work that they were brought on for. Your application's primary and unique functionality should be paramount, and the developers you employ should be brought on for their strengths that contribute foremost to that functionality. So to do a little recap of these strengths to the use cases, unified APIs have three major takeaways to immediately show the value to any code base that is importantly in need of integrations. So the first is depth of functionality. You can harness a depth of functionality that would normally require an incredible amount of time to implement yourself. By having the unified API be the go-between for your integrations means your users can access any and all of these supported services in one fell swoop. The depth of functionality helps you serve your customers through the features and data from these prior use cases, especially so through the reusability of code. When you need new integrations, the code is already in place through a unified API. This helps your application with an easy roadmap towards long-term scalability, as your initial integration code can be reused for future integrations. Next, and after this is probably the most obvious, is speed to market. So by integrating with a unified API, you can cut down on development and testing hours immensely, allowing your product to deploy faster. There are no sudden curveballs or outlier cases because once you build a connection with the unified API, all of your integrations are done. Unified endpoints means a single route can connect to any cloud storage service or cloud calendar service or CRM service and so on. And finally, and what's probably most important in the long run, is maintenance free. So with unified APIs, you can ensure the long-term stability of your product by offloading your integration maintenance to them. They proactively adjust to cloud service integration API updates, so your connection stays sound. When one cloud service winds down a version of its API, unified APIs update to a new version so that you don't have to. The benefit of this is your ability to leave your code as is without experiencing a pause in service or a lapse of functionality. It means you can maintain integrations with multiple cloud services at once without ever changing your code. Essentially, unified APIs allow developers to do what they are best at, and that is innovate. There's a few things that will break a developer spirit, like constantly having to fix API integrations. There's angry users on one side, confusing or incomplete docs on the other, and a deadline of get it done right now because our application is broken. That's not conducive to quality work being done. And it doesn't encourage developers to be passionate about their job, which I think we probably all agree they absolutely should be. So in closing, there's over tens of thousands of publicly available APIs today. That number is only increasing, and until there is a universally accepted data format for categorical data, these issues will plague developers working on integrations. The future of enterprise IT management is not in providing connectivity. Integration work and management should not be the responsibility of internal teams. They should be offloaded to external cloud services, each with their own expertise to deliver plug-and-play integration with other providers. Out-of-the-box connectivity should be table stakes. For now, though, unified APIs provide a simple and easier method to giving your application a leg up on enticing and maintaining users, as well as keeping your developers focused on the most important pieces of functionality in your application, their own unique functionality. When all of these services play together well, it's a win-win situation, no matter the industry that's taking advantage of it. So great. We've got a couple minutes left at the end now for some questions. So I'm just going to head over and see what came in while we were going through that. So 1 second. Oh, great. Yeah, okay. So for the data security use case, in addition to the activity monitoring functionality that you provide, Do you also provide the functionality to take further action and remediate? Yes, that is an awesome question. Yeah, so because we provide read and write functionality to the APIs, if something is determined to be a security risk, our APIs will allow you to rectify the situation. Let me think of an example. So if you detect a change to a file and determine that maybe, say, a social security number was added to it, you can use the Kloudless APIs to pull that file into your app, make the necessary changes, and then put it back in place. So that would just be one example. But yes, we absolutely do allow you to take further action and remediate. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go through. It looks like I have a few here. Do you have one unified data model for everything? For example, cloud storage and CRM have one data model. Yes. And another very good question. So we have we differentiate from a few of our competitors in this way. Some of our competitors offer unified data models that encompass all of their categorical offerings. We do not do that because we find that to be frankly a big waste of space. Nobody really wants to get back a big data model with a ton of null values in it. So what we do is we provide different unified data models for each categorical API we have. Example of this would be sales leads, accounts, and opportunities in CRM don't exist in a cloud storage API. So we don't really feel like it makes sense to have a null value on a key inside of a return object when you're going to be accessing an entire different API. So our unified storage API is one unified model. Our unified CRM API is one model, and our unified calendar API is one model as well. Hopefully that answers that. And yeah, I think, we got one more minute. I'll do one more. Okay, so in the use case for Salesforce that you pointed out, we know there's often custom objects. Oh, custom objects within Salesforce. Okay. How do you handle that in your CRM data model? Oh, that's a great question too. Yeah, so this is obviously a unified storage webinar, but we have the one use case where they're sort of blending unified storage and unified CRM API together. CRMs have custom objects a lot of times because they cover so much information that often you will have an entirely different data object depending on what you are doing within Salesforce. So the unified model that we have contains a raw field that returns custom objects in their original format. So we allow raw data pass through. With a unified data model, there's obviously going to be discrepancies between different services. And we don't feel like leaving out that information does anybody any benefit. So we also give the ability to get the raw data back from any of our APIs. However, in Salesforce, we return in a specific way with the raw field. So taking Salesforce as an example, when making a request to our API, you see core CRM concepts like accounts and contacts and leads and opportunities and tasks and some of the different ones we talked about before. They will all be returned in a unified format. But custom objects that are specific to Salesforce, like a billing address or tenant-specific serial numbers, something like that, they get returned in the raw field in their original format. So what this does is it ensures that you're able to get data complete experience through our CRM API. This was something that that we found was something our customers could absolutely could do without. It was pivotal to them being able to use our unified data models with Salesforce, and so that's the way that we took to rectify that. Great, so it's a minute over. Thank you so much to everybody that made it out for this. We really, really appreciate you coming out and showing up. If you have any questions at all, please direct them to hello@kloudless.com. We will be more than happy to answer any and all of them that we get. If you have any follow-up questions you didn't have a chance to write into the chat today, please send them there. As I said, we will be sending out a follow-up email with the answers that we covered today, as well as a recap of the webinar, and we will have a video to download the webinar up very, very soon as well. So again, thank you so much to everybody that came out. We really, really appreciate it, and good luck on solving your integration problems in the future. We are here for you. All right, everybody have a great day.